Good morning, everyone. As we say in India, Namaste. Yes. I'm very honored to be here on the invitation of Professor Shin. I met Dr. Kelly, who is the Vice President, so I would like to offer my respect. Eric and Michael from SSIR. I'm just taking your first names without knowing you, but that's how it is, the world it is. And Hyang Lee, who is the Director of Ashoka Korea, and I'm honored to be Ashoka Fellow in this world. I'm presenting today the work I do and my team does across the globe, which is in gaming, and how games can really promote global empathy and cross-cultural understanding is what we are trying to aim at. And we are also looking at, because people play games, they generate huge data, which is actually very meaningful data of young people, the millennials. And this data is going to really change the world in a very powerful and meaningful way. So I am going to speak about this entire model, about how we are going across the globe, what is this the game is all about, and how we are actually currently cracking the game industry itself to think about the greater good of games and not just talk about commerciality or the money part of the gaming. So this is how it is. So I am Parag. I respectfully come to Korea because one of the Nobel laureates from India wrote this poem way back in 1928, which is Lamp of the East. And I think this connection of Korea and India is very different. It's not commercial. It's actually very emotional, because this poem, people tell me, changed Korea what it is today. 30 years later, the revolution started in 1960. And you see Korea what it is today, because one of the reasons was this poem, of course. So I feel proud actually being Indian, coming here in Korea and spending time with all you are, where you are. One of the greatest revelation I got is that empathy exists in every culture. So it's not a phenomena which is like alien, which doesn't exist in some cultures. I started finding names, and names are everywhere in this entire globe. And these are very interesting and fascinating phrases people use for empathy. Actually, the Industrial Revolution started somewhere in 1850, 275 years ago, in Western culture. And machines emerged, and humans are excited to see this, the way machines started helping. So we were all excited actually how these machines are going to really help us in a very big way. And to support the Industrial Revolution, the education system started talking about STEM model, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, because the Industrial Revolution essentially wanted people to have jobs in the industries where they could change things. And you have these people like Charlie Chaplin, the Modern Times movie which talked about actually how this Industrial Revolution killed human beings and their abilities as humans, because we were just interested in the hands who work, not in the brain or the capacities like emotionals. And this is actually how the entire scenario, what we have as human beings, completely we started losing. So this is like solving the problems, relating to each other, co-creating something, reflecting back, and then doing something back into this world, get going, get real, connected to the real world, adapt, persistence, greed, resilience, empathy, social emotional skills, all started losing very fast. And the greatest disconnect happened when the social emotional things really started disappearing in this world. And of course, because it's a skill, and what we started losing was empathy. This is a great graph I got. This is a research somebody has done about human perspectives and how it is changing over the time. And on the x-axis, there is something called how people are looking from next week to their children's lifetime, and how people are looking as families to the world. And you will immediately realize that people are actually thinking only about next few months or few years, and not beyond their family or their own oneself. And very few people are thinking about the world and the greater good. And this is the graph, which is very simple but very powerful, which tells you the story of this world. These are the outcome of this entire revolution which happened in the industry. And the millennials who are really disconnected from this world, who are using their echo screens, the mobile and laptops, and they are actually constantly watching. The average time on the echo screen currently, the Facebook actually has a statistics, somewhere between 150 hours every week. So that's how we are spending our time, having a data which is not doing any good to us, the information which is not really helping the world, and data which was collected by a lot of organizations like United Nations is not really meaningful to us. Everybody talked about empathy deficit suddenly. Around 2006, Obama talked about empathy deficit is more a worry than federal deficit. Ben's and Jerry's in US, the ice cream, they started calling empathy is not simply the flavor of the month or the week. And this red line actually describes Jeff Bezos in a different way, because he's talking about $1 trillion company, and he wants to purge the people who are actually not empathetic, because he's not interested in empathy, but probably he's talking about a $1 trillion company. So that's how the empathy word is being used repeatedly by people across the globe. The way we spend time, this is again interesting. This is coming from a book called Cognitive Overload. 200 billion hours a year spent watching a TV by adults, and this small red dot, actually it is smaller than that, I made it a little bigger, 100 million hours to create Wikipedia. And Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales is also Ashoka Fellow. So 100 million hours he spent by creating something which is going to be the historical moment in this world, by creating data coming from people across the globe, and something which is wonderful. So this is how actually the distinction of the world is happening right now. Bill Dutton, the founder of Ashoka, also said that we have to teach empathy as we do illiteracy. The teach has a different meaning here. Teach doesn't mean you have to teach something, but actually he's saying that empathy is getting very critical right now, and we really need to push empathy in a very big way. The challenge is we are talking about millennials, and a lot of millennials are sitting here, I see, and how actually we are going to reach with this model to every classroom in this world, and how we are going to change this millennial thinking, their behaviors, so that they become empathetic in this world. They have social emotional skills, and they can really change this world a better place to live. What will challenge, what will not change in this world, for example, is these rooms in the universities or the faculties, because many a times they are coming from disciplines where they have to teach something. Maybe syllabus, there is a slight chance that you can change the syllabus somewhere. Maybe teaching methods, because teaching methods are evolving, and you can actually bring problem solving and all these methods together in learning. So it is going beyond textbooks and going beyond many things. But what is going to change for sure, and I completely believe and I am confident, is the millennials, because this is the only force in this world which is going to change, because they want to change. Millennials are here and they carry eco-strains and they all play games. So being a doctor, I left hospitals. I developed 3 hospitals in India. I really thought internet is coming around 2000. And I said that why not shift from medicine to internet? And I shifted. And this is the outcome of what we are all do here. So the game idea which started was that the game which can it connect to the real world? Can it be realistic against all other games which are illusionary? Can it make people think? Can people become empathetic while playing the game? Can we use the real world data rather than some illusional and fictional data? And can we evolve a strong sense of connectedness when people play this game? So this was the kind of a design we had in mind. And we thought of a simulation game based on real data of the world, driven by life algorithms, allowing users to experience how people live in 193 countries who signed the United Nations mandate, experiencing disparity in this world, the extreme poor having only 10 or 15, $20 a month, and the richest, and the diversity of the humanity across this globe. Because it's very difficult to teach these things through a textbook, or if I speak about it, it's not going to really happen. And then the game was born, which we tagged it as You Are the World. And this is the largest gamified simulation engine right now in the world. I can claim it here on the stage, which can really change this world in a very positive and powerful way. The game is called Real Lives, and it's as I said, it's a simulation game. The game design is very simple. We have a user interface where people play, like a mobile screen or a laptop screen. Then there is a big algorithm, which is about 400 algorithms, which we have written out of our common sense. We don't require people from Stanford, IIT Mumbai, or Harvard or MIT, because we know what life is. Every one of us knows what life is. My mother knows what life is. She never went to the university, but she knows actually what the life is all about. And then we have the huge data, big data coming from the world, collected by all these agencies like United Nations, World Bank, UNICEF, OECD. All these people collected data about life. It's about education, it's about economics, it's about how people get jobs, it's about agriculture, it's about everything. So we have huge data collected over 17 years of time, and this data actually is curated in a particular way so that it gets simulated. And in the game you are born. So I call this game as billions or trillions story builder, where every time you are born in the game, you create this story with the software. So it's not only the software gives you a story, it's not one-way communication. You build the story with the software on the screen because you are living a life somewhere, you make choices, you experience chances and all these things. This is how the simple UI looks like, and it's a text simulation game. We are actually breaking the game definition here, where people want to play games which are like highly 3D and immersive and graphically designed and animated. You don't need that, because your human brain, as a doctor I know, is very powerful to understand even the words or expressions, or even if I look at a person, I might cry. So you have this brain capacity which is sitting into your brain, a cognitive brain, which we are using in a very powerful way. As I said, the entire 21st century skills about new skills, the new jobs, but one of the key jobs which is going to evolve is the life. And life, understanding life is going to be more important than anything else. Everybody is talking about it. Even Elon Musk talked about how he sees the future should not be sad. What it means by that? He's talking about life in a very different way. And how you are going to connect to the real world is going to be the big problem. So we have this big algorithm of life, which actually is the backbone of the entire real life game, which actually works. I can explain it later who are more interested because it takes time. And here in the life, when you play and open the screen, you can be born randomly as a life somewhere. Like you are born in Korea, I am born in India, and somebody is born in US. So randomly we are decided. We don't decide our caste, we don't decide our religion, we don't decide where to be born as a man or as a woman. So everything is given. So that's how it is. And the latest thing we are adding with the huge sustainable development goal database is that you can be born using a sustainable development goal, maybe goal number 4, which is quality education or hunger or poverty. And one of the things I say that it's like one life amongst the billion which you live, and people are playing this game for many years. As I said, we have the huge data which is coming. It's a data simulation engine which is collected by all these organizations. You can be in 193 countries experiencing all these situations there. Real life is really bringing a revolution, I must say, because I see that trend happening right now in the world. I saw this post on LinkedIn yesterday, published by Amir Nathan, who is the Ashoka Israel director. And he actually, this post says very interesting things, that how you can beat machines, because everybody is talking about AI in Silicon Valley. Driverless cars, when people are poor, out of 7 billion, 6 billion are poor, they don't have a car. But we are talking about driverless cars here. And he says that artificial intelligence cannot master empathy and soft skills. And this is a space young people have, which they can really conquer, and they can get more powerful in this world to be more empathetic and more soft skills they can drive with. The model we are talking about is how we can evolve from STEM to STEAM, because STEM we need science, technology, engineering, mathematics anyway. But the addition of one E before that, about empathy, and another about ecology and sustainability, calling this model as STEAM, is actually the dream I carry. And I think it's very easy to bring this kind of a model into the university like Hunyang or anywhere in this world. And we see this evidence of that. We want to influence this one generation, because this one generation is most critical right now in the history of the humankind. Because unless and until you do something with this generation right now, you are going to lose a hell lot of things about it. The model we are talking about, how people get empathetic, how they can start talking about sustainability, and how they can be change makers. And I see this trend, as I told you. As I said, that the triangle of life is driven by sustainability, empathy, and change making. And this model is definitely going to work. I see this game played by very young people, this French guy in Paris, asking his mother questions all the time when the game was happening on the screen. He's not even 9-year-old. He's less than. He was playing for 3 hours, this game, in Paris. There is a millennial again in Paris who is playing the game, thinking, see his face, and he's really thinking a lot. And I know actually some of the students who are sitting here, they have played real life. I know their reactions they have given. This is a Korean with another Ashoka fellow, Jung Chapnil. And this workshop was conducted by him. Again, breaking the tradition that Korean young people want to play very fancy games. No, they want to play games which they can think. They can make something out of that. This is in ETH, where Einstein studied and taught. The university is talking about change maker right now. I had a call last night from 3 to 5 in the morning with the students there, and we have launched a very big program which they are calling as I Am Change Maker there. And see the statements each student has driven. They are the students who were looking for a job at Roche and Novartis and all these big pharmaceutical companies. But all these students are now saying that, can we do something different in this humanity? Can we do something different as our skills? And this is how the new generation is. This is a teachers workshop and a lot of teachers are getting interested. This is at Ashoka office, and these are Hanyang University students. This is a letter written by one of the students there. And this is the outcome, emotional outcome which is coming out of. And this girl who actually, or the boy who has written this letter, I am sure that it has made a deep impact on him or her, which he will not forget in his life. And I can assure you that because I know how things happen. This is yesterday's call, and I was talking to students because I was here, I could not go there. And these are the new students, the batch at ETH, who are going to be the new entrepreneurs at ETH. And we are talking to them all the time. I am fortunate to meet 3 Nobel laureates in my life, and 2 of them are now my advisors. One is Lee Hartwell, who got his Nobel Prize in Medicine. He's from Seattle and currently at Arizona State University. He talks big way about real life. And he's currently talking about sustainability and sustainable development goals at Arizona State University. And we are actually really benefited by his vision and the way he thinks about it. Another guy is James Hickman at Chicago University, who is an economist. And he's talking about the new assessment about the young students of the millennials. And he invited me talking about how the students are going to be assessed. Can we use the game model, the real-life model, for the new assessment of the students at the universities and at the classrooms? So all these people, these are the huge teachers' acknowledgement we get from across the globe. Mainly the US was the market, but now we are in Korea, and we will go to other places for sure. These are the research papers we are a small team. We are just 10 people company in India, and I don't have brilliant people working with me. I have very ordinary people working with me. With 10 people, we are actually doing extremely global impact project, and I am very proud about it. But these are the papers written by University of Santa Clara. There is a PhD thesis in Germany. There is a paper written by New York University on the game design we are actually talking about. So we are fundamentally really disrupting something in this world. The media has really flouted our game, praised our game. PC Gamer, Wired, USA Today, Pop Matters, amazing writers. I never met these journalists, but they tell me that possibly they started even thinking different, how their role of the journalist should be in this world. So this is how it is. This is a book published by a Canadian researcher, Choosing and Using Digital Games in the Classroom. She has given only 6 games in the book. Out of that, one was bought by Bill Gates at $3.4 billion, Minecraft. And out of 6 games, one is real life. And I'm very happy that people are talking about these games without even me meeting them. What we want to bring is that cognitive surplus is there, but we want to actually create the non-cognitive surplus, which is the power of humanity. We want to really create the empathy design, because the way the design thinking is currently politically used to steal the data and flout with the privacy and confidentiality of the people. I think the moment you call the entire design thinking as empathy design, the people will not play around with the people's mind anymore. We are talking the entire internet, which is called neutral, as internet of empathy, because then you can happily share a porno video. You can steal the data because everything is neutral. Nobody is going to ask questions. So where are the definitions going? And these definitions are going to be very important if we want to see young people as change makers. We want to create empathy surplus in this world, and empathy surplus is the only way actually you can sustain this world without anything. I also talk about big way about AI to I, because AI is AI. It's not about human beings. I is I. If I can be powerful, I am empowered in this world through something, then I can really change this world in a very different way. There was a big workshop in San Francisco about how machines or how technology can be empathetic. technology will be never empathetic because they are robots. The people who are sitting behind technology, who are creating this technology, if they are empathetic, what is the outcome of that is going to be empathetic. So I'm not bothered actually. So this is the entire model. You are the world. We are reaching out to every millennial in this world. We are reaching out to every classroom in this world in a very powerful way. I call students as change makers. Yeah. Change makers, because students was a definition of 20th and 19th century. It's gone. It's a past. You should call starting yourself as change makers. Realize this is something that is not just for you, it's you. And not only just you, but how you are the world. It's not you as one person in this world. You can change this world in a different way. It's a tectonic shift which is happening. We are moving from profit to purpose. We are moving from hierarchies to networks. We are controlling ones, but now we want to empower people. We are from planning to experimentation, because experimentation has the beauty. And we are shifting from privacy to transparency. And this wave which is coming, which is driven by millennials, I'm sure that real life is going to really play a big role, making them empathetic, bringing social emotional skills. At Hanyang University, Professor Shin was walking with me last time, showing me this tower there in the train station, which is I call as a buildings which can be reshaped. This is a small example of empathy, because how you can actually connect to this world, how you can connect to the problems of this world, where you can make the small donation of these things there. This is the website and where the things happen. Thank you.
In one of the memes you showed us, it says millennial generations are lazy. And at the bottom, there was another subtitle saying that how they will save us.
No. Yeah, so that's how the Time magazine article came in 2012, where they said that we all label them as lazy because they are really bored with the system we have created as parents or the education system. So they don't really connect with the model right now. I was talking to a professor at SKKU, and he said that Parag, I get bored these days because people have Google and everything as a knowledge which is there. So how we shift from knowledge to action in this world is the role of the university. And if this role is not performed by us, they are going to get lazy and they are going to get bored. But they have immense potential because they are brilliant. They can use technology never before like we did. And I think they have immense potential in terms of energy, the resources. So all these things are there. Now, how to make them really a change maker is the question. If we don't do that, they are going to get something which is not going to be useful for all of us. So this article is brilliant. I can share that with you.
Yes. I have a question regarding how you manage to gather information regarding these different countries where you base practice.
Yeah. I can tell you. No. So we were a little tricky. We collected data from the people who already collected data. This is a public data. Say for example, the health of the children comes from UNICEF. The health of every citizen of this world comes from World Health Organization. The agriculture data comes from one of the United Nations organizations. Education data comes from UNESCO or OECD. Now all these organizations collected data. And I am saying, I'm making a statement here that we collected this data for the last 70 years. If I ask you what is the Korean data, I'm sure that you cannot tell me what the Korean data is all about. So United Nations has failed in one way to bring this data to young people to make empowered decisions on this data. And this is the role we are playing right now. This data which we have collected last 17 years from all these organizations, which is updated very frequently, is coming in the game. And that's how the game gets content through this data which is coming. And I can explain you more when you